What a beautiful thing, this thing called life, right? And I wonder, what feeds your soul? Come and join us on Uplift today and find out what Tru says about it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whether you're watching us live or in replay, know we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us on Uplift today. My name's Sarah Wade. I am co-host joining you from Perth in Western Australia. My amazing friend on the other side of the planet is joining me, Mr. Neil Thrussell. Great to have you here as usual. Lovely to see you. I know you've been up to a lot recently. Anything you want to share?
That's a whole show. I've just been so busy. It's been incredibly. It's been a blessing, and at sometimes I felt it's a curse. But I'm just so excited to be here spending time with you and our guest. I'm really excited to have Tru on our show today.
Right, yeah, Tru's been on quite a journey. He's been all sorts of things in the healing industries, from practitioners through to nurses in psych wards to a healer, messenger, singer, songwriter, and so much more. Tru, guys, Stefan Starhorse, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
For those who are watching at home going, hey, this guy's name's not John Smith, can you walk us through the story of your name?
Okay, well, Tru is a name gifted to me by a lovely, beautiful lady who I met using the name Troubard because I've been a traveling sort of troubadour much of my life, and she just decided to call me Tru. And it was at a time in which a 16-year marriage had ended, and just when she started calling me Tru, I just went, oh, it's time to be true to yourself and just really live your own soul. And so that's how that came about. And Stefan is just the shorter form of my actual full last name, which is Stefanowich. Romanian gypsy on my father's side and French on my mother's. And Starhorse is a name given to me. It's my spirit name given to me by the Cree people here in Alberta. And it was after I went to a very unusual and special ceremony that was called the Shaking Tent ceremony. And I had to travel 9 hours into northern Alberta, went into the forest and to a longhouse, and then there was a tent inside of the longhouse, and then there was a whole ceremony that took place in which one of the elders was communicating with the ancestors, grandfathers and the grandmothers, and another elder was translating the messages that he was sharing. And at one point in the ceremony, which was 8 hours long, so about 6 hours into the ceremony, I just when it was open for us to ask questions, I just simply asked, is it my time to receive my spirit name? And I didn't really expect to get it because traditionally you usually go for a few sweats and you get to know the community more and they get to know you, and then maybe at some point you get your spirit name. But after I told them what I'd been doing, they consulted with the ancestors. They came back and they just said, yeah, your spirit name is Starhorse. And one of the elders that I spoke to afterwards, he said, spend as much time as you can to commune with the horses and allow the wisdom of the horse to speak to you. And so it's been a really special experience.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. Now, there might be some people who are looking at this episode name going, what on earth is a troubadour? Can you explain? What is a troubadour?
A troubadour. Let's see. It's when you get kicked out the door. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. A troubadour
Troubadour,
is,
you go.
it's an old term. It's like a medieval term when they would refer to traveling minstrels. And a troubadour is simply a traveling musician who is sharing songs and stories that express the spirit of communities. And so that's essentially what troubadour kind of speaks to.
I love that there's so many ways that we can express ourselves. As an artist myself, I know that there are different pockets of the art world that I can relate to, and that I know others can too. Did you go to poetry and music first, or was there another one of the arts that maybe influenced your course?
Well, let's see. I'm always challenged to not get too long-winded in my answers. As Neil knows from when I speak at Unity. But in any case, just to give you a bit of a background, which is really what inspired music to become something that is so central to my own life, is that I was born to two blind parents in Toronto, Ontario, and my father was a singer. Although he wasn't singing when I was in his company, all except around the house, and he actually was on some kind of a show on CBC in the 1950s. And my mother actually sang high opera, and but they were both blind. My mother went blind when she was 13, and my father about 3 years after he met my mother. So it was a kind of an odd thing, and as a result, I went through a traumatic experience when I was 6, which ended up causing me to be separated from my family. And then I was put into foster homes and went through a whole bunch of foster homes. And writing was always a way to discover meaning with respect to what was going on in my life. It was also very much a way of connecting in with certain emotions and things like that. So, and then when I went to a couple of universities, and I did not go to get a degree. I just went to study subjects that I really was drawn to. And so subjects such as I was at the University of Toronto, I was in the literary studies program. So I was literally immersed in literature. In particular, with respect to the evolution of consciousness as it was being expressed through famous works of literature.
Cool.
So, yeah. So yeah, poetry and writing, and I pretty much write something every day. So.
I'm feeling inspired already. I don't know about you, Neil.
Absolutely. I've been blessed to have Tru in my life, because he comes and speaks at the Unity, this spiritual center that Tina and I belong to, and so I've been blessed with his music and his take on life. Maybe not his philosophy on life, or just his way to look at life, and it's very heart-centered. So, Tru, did you always find yourself in a heart-centered environment, or did you learn that from the school of hard knocks?
Yeah, I'll say yeah to both of those. To both of those. My mother was a very spiritual person, and so even though I was separated from her, uh, I had already been strongly influenced by her own spiritual sensibilities, and as a young boy, I actually had a number of sort of mystical experiences. Some of them very, very powerful in connection to nature and energy, and so the heart. It's interesting because we often our greatest gifts and contributions come from the experiences of being wounded and going through difficulties. And so I would have to say that in a lot of ways, my life was initiating me into a highly sensitive, heart-focused experience of the human condition. And so I was always fascinated by the nature of things. And so that just led me down this path. And I was, as Neil said, I mean, I've done a lot of different things. I was a lay minister in the United Church for a time. Then I left that, and then I went into many worldwide spiritual teachings, and so all of that, of course, speaks to the heart. Its intention is to be a source of love. And so 2016, I was leaving this relationship with the woman I mentioned earlier, and it was nothing uncomfortable. It was due to some circumstances that she had to deal with, and then I was having these dreams, and the dreams were saying, it's your time to go walkabout. And that's a familiar term for you, Sarah. And as I was having these dreams, the lady I was with, her daughter came back, and there was things that they needed to do. So I basically realized, I guess I got to listen to this dream, and it was so powerful, the direction to go in, that the day before I was leaving to get on the road, I went to a store for a half an hour and came back, and we lived on a piece of property with about 6 huge oak trees. And when I came back, 2 huge limbs from the oak trees had fallen down exactly where my Jeep was normally parked. And if I had been in the vehicle, I wouldn't be here now. And if it had crashed my Jeep, I wouldn't have been able to get on the road. So I took that as a sure sign. The universe was saying, you got to go. So, yeah.
So I think this would be a beautiful time to let our viewers, our current viewers and our online viewers that are listening to this in replay, to one of Tru's songs. Would it be okay if I played Love in All Things?
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay.
I see myself when I look into your eyes. I can no longer just pass you by. No matter how far the distance may seem, we are all here to share in a dream. Now we are open while broken upon angelic wings of all that is love within all things. We breathe the same air beneath the same sun. No one is separate from anyone. We just all thought we were here on our own, searching for a place that we can call home. But now we're open, well broken upon angelic wings of all that is love within all things. This is our time to forgive and forget all that has told us that we're not enough yet. Nothing to prove or compare ourselves to, just a celebration of me and of you. 'Cause we are open while broken upon angelic wings to all that is love within all things. So just be open while broken upon angelic wings of all that is love within all things. I see myself when I look into your eyes. I can no longer just pass you by.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So what inspired you to write Love in All Things?
Well, I guess it's the greatest influence behind that song would be pretty much being stated in the title itself, which is to experience that love is expressing itself in such a variety and diverse way, so that even experiences that are unpleasant and cause struggle and confusion, that can be ultimately a gift if we are willing to look at it and in a sense unearth the gift that is within the struggle. And so Love in All Things was a moment in which then the final picture on that video where you see that one person in the crowd highlighted over everybody else, as if that to me was the example of how we become unseen, how we can be in the crowd but we pass each other by. And I've spent a number of years where I was working with people on the street in Toronto, and some of the most profound moments came from sitting down next to a homeless guy, and he starts talking about his experiences, and such great wisdom would come out of what he would share. And so it's the realization that if we're willing to look, there is love in all things.
Absolutely. Some of my most scary times in my life is when I've been, one of my coaches, you may know him, Stephen Garrett, we've had him on the show. He said, Neil, get out of your comfort zone. And if you really want to know a different version of spirituality, go talk with the homeless, the street people. And so I went, and I got out of my comfort, and I did. And it truly was profound in the simplicity, is that all you have is love. And it was just like, well, it's got to be more complicated than that. No. And it's not. It's not.
It's a fascinating thing that when you have nothing to lose, you have the most to give, which can sound paradoxical and contradictory, but that's what I've experienced. Like when I went to Cuba by myself, and I found that these people who were very, very humble, very little possessions, but their generosity, their compassion, their openness of heart was truly memorable and leaves a strong impact. So that when I was coming back to this part of the world where we have so much, and sometimes when we don't have too much, we begin to really appreciate what it is that we do have. So
I can relate. In 2006, after the tsunami, I went to help rebuild. My brother-in-law is from Sri Lanka, and I went to help rebuild after the tsunami. And mental health was not really provided for. And this man and his wife had gone through a horrible trauma. They had lost all four of their children in the tsunami. And she was catatonic and couldn't function, but he still needed to go out and work, and he hadn't grieved the loss of his children because he was looking after his wife. But that's not the whole part of the story. The part of the story is we went to visit with him, and he made $7 a day, and he brought cookies for us to have, which cost $7. He spent one day's wage so that we could have, so that he could be a good host to us.
Beautiful.
Oh, that speaks volumes. Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate, and if you're listening or watching this and you can relate to that feeling of maybe you've had that gift of someone sharing with you, or maybe you've shared something with someone else. It's a beautiful, heartwarming feeling, and thank you both for mentioning it. Oh, it's an interesting thing, isn't it, how we navigate different areas of our life. You mentioned, Neil, about going from getting out of your comfort zone with the spiritual path that you were on to go into a homeless person. True, you've spoken about how your path has taken you in different areas. Is there some sort of link for you, True, about the areas, and is there some sort of maybe a bridge or something that's guiding you forward?
Let me see if I understand your question. Is there a bridge that's
I'm feeling like
me?
there's a lot of talk about maybe impermanence and imperfection and transformation with your songwriting and your messages, and I'm curious what is the link? Is there a link?
Well, there's probably several links if I was to sit and really think about them all, because every day we receive so much that can add to the story of our own discovery of life and unfolding. But I would say that the greatest link has been, being enthralled by the fact that our nature is imbued in nature, and yet in our civilized quote world, we we can become so disconnected from the simple truths and the simple ways in which we can actually really appreciate each other, enjoy each other, and support each other. Collaborate. I'm a big believer in a time and a supporter of a time coming when we will not be so much living in competition with each other. And so the bridge for me has been actually, and it's going to sound kind of odd, but the bridge is suffering. It's through suffering that questions get asked that you're normally not asking, and so the bridge has often been confusion and alienation and abandonment. Because I was basically 17, 18 years old in high school, running a halfway house for bikers and kids on the street and so on. And it became a natural outpouring of my own desire to be of service in some way to the struggles that we all, and it's because of my own struggle. It's because of what I went through that caused me to be a much more highly sensitive person towards what's going on around me and the sufferings of people in the world. So, and I'm a high empath, so I can feel the energy of what's going on in a very strong way. And in fact, the writing that I do is mostly it's channeled. So I just go into a kind of a meditative state, and often spirit, the muses, they just give me a word or two, and they often just say, just write it down, and then you'll know what's coming next. And so the experience of stepping into the unknown and trusting that it will guide you to what it is that will serve you if you're willing to be present to it. So I would say that that's often been the bridge.
Interesting.
What I
Go now.
What I love how you broach the subject about empath, because most empaths think of themselves so positively, but they become empaths as a self-protection mechanism because they were born into a highly volatile situation, and it's their adaptation to protect themselves that they've learned to attune to all of these things. And it's a truth, and it's a terrible way, but it's because of the suffering, as you said, that people learn these skills. And then when you journey on a path and you start to use it, for lack of a better term, for the goodness of the world, it's a beautiful gift.
Yes. And it has been asked, I always find it interesting because, many sacred teachings speak about the fact that, we're already, we have everything we need, like, and yet we struggle thinking that there's something we have to get. And recently there's a story that was told to me. There's another form of work that I do called the core process work, which is where I tap into a person's sort of core story, and it goes towards what is a central wound that you kind of come into this life with, which kind of becomes your Achilles heel, the thing you keep tripping over, keeps getting in your way as you're trying to step into greater potential and expression of your life, right? And so it, I guess, where was I going to go with that? just that. Oh yeah, in the story that I was told, I was the nephew of a chief in an indigenous First Nations community, and the chief very much loved me, and in fact offered me things that he wasn't necessarily offering to his first son. And so something kept on getting generated in which that son became jealous of me, and we ended up having a conflict. And I would go to the chief and say, look at like he was going to betroth the most attractive woman in the tribe to me, and his son wanted that woman, and so I didn't want the conflict. And but nonetheless, one of the things that he said to me, which became a pivotal sentence, which was that he said, "Why do you not step up and claim what is yours?" And that left a very powerful, oversweeping message in connection to my whole life and to the whole idea of power. We tend to be more afraid of power than we are of being in the comfort of our familiar disempowerment. So to step into one's power is a very challenging and for many people a very scary thing. But I recently went and had a session with an amazing woman who is, I lose words to describe this person. Her name is Boshenko, or Boshenka. She's from Croatia, and she is a master teacher of a course called To Love Like Never Before. And so I went and had a little session with her a couple of days ago. And in the session, I brought up this issue of claiming, the idea of, you have to step up and claim what is yours. And she said, she paused for a moment and she's looking at me and she said, "You're a highly sensitive person." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, if you had come here to claim something, you would not be a highly sensitive person. You would just go and take it. You would claim it, right?" So she reframed that phrase, which actually really transformed my relationship with the story that I was given, which is that she said, you need to start asking for what you want. It's not about claiming, it's about asking for what you want.
Inviting the answer.
And that our consciousness, she was saying, consciousness is complete, it's whole. There's nothing you have to add to it, and it doesn't have to do anything because you were born with consciousness, right? And the other thing you were born with is an ego. And the ego tends to undermine your relationship to your consciousness.
Oh, it's a tricky trickster, that ego.
Yeah, it sure is. It is a trickster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we talk about ego then, like for you, how have you dealt with your own personal ego, and how does that transcend into the amazing heart-centered work that you've done with others?
Well, oh gosh, that's a big question. There's lots that can be said about that. How did I deal with my ego? First, I had to really recognize it. I mean, I had to really get to know it. I had, it's, when we feel something that's uncomfortable, we tend to want to push it away from ourselves and keep it at a distance because it's uncomfortable. But if we do that, we tend to generate more discomfort and more confusion. And but when we step into that discomfort and we face it, we look at it, we get intimate with it. What does it taste like? What does it feel like? What's it saying to me? And when I can do that, with any state or condition that I'm in, whether I'm sad or happy or whatever, and I'm willing to be fully present to it, then I will actually begin. It'll heal itself. It's kind of like fear. If you run away from fear, well, fear will chase you like a wolf. But if you stare fear right straight in the face, it'll actually dissipate like smoke. And so dealing with my ego came from being willing to look at what was some of the most uncomfortable areas of self-protection that the ego was engaged in. And I had to look at that and go, well, what are you really protecting me from? And in the end, it was only to keep me small. It was only to keep me. There's a beautiful distinction that was made in this course that I just finished, which is that there's a polarity to the ego. And that on one end of the ego, the term was given its majesty. And on the other end of the ego, it was given the term its holiness. And so its holiness tends to exaggerate its importance and what it thinks it has to offer, and its majesty tends to push you down, tries to keep you small. And so those two are dancing with each other all the time. And so I have to see the dance. The only way that I can, the ultimate goal is to solicit my my ego to be of service to my heart. And so I basically begin to ask and work on releasing my attachment to, basically the ego is about self-preservation. It's only concerned about preserving its own sense of self. And once you begin to say, okay, serve love, serve a higher consciousness within me. And when that starts to happen, then everything starts to shift. And it's an amazing growth process, and I think it's infinite. I think we are expanding. You know, what's the old cartoon? To infinity and beyond.
Absolutely.
God, I love a good Buzz Lightyear quote thrown in there amongst this amazing conversation. Oh,
So when you're
I love that.
writing, Tru, so when you're writing, does it come like a lightning bolt, or is like a sweet dance, or is it all different cascade? Each song is birthed in a different way.
I would say that they're all birthed in a slightly different way. I actually recently, it was someone we both know, Katie Grinham, whose birthday it just was. And so I decided, I'm going to get on the phone and give her a call on Saturday when it was her birthday. And actually, it wasn't Saturday. I think it was a couple of days later. But they were having a big party for her, and so I decided to write a song in celebration of her birthday. And I got halfway through it, and then I couldn't, because I was writing it on the very day of her birthday, so I only got halfway through it. But then I got on the phone and I sang what I had written for her, and I didn't even know what was going to come, and this is what came. I'll just read you the lyrics. Because you came to love yourself into being. You came to show your way to love. You came to fall and rise again upon your field of trials, where who you are returns to dust, yet deeply knows what you can trust upon this circle of life. The angels came to kiss your cheek, to watch the light in you unfurl, anticipating when you'd speak all your love into the world. And so that's as far as I got on that, but that generally is how it comes. I usually get, and that became the title. The title is Circle of Life, and of course, being a person's birthday, it all just seemed to be in flow with that. So often I just start, Neil. And I start to write, and then I just let go, and literally, many times I'll go back to reading what I've written, and I go, "Who the heck wrote that?" It feels like it's the angels who are writing, and
Channeling it.
Yeah.
I watched I watched a Serge Tankian interview recently. He's the singer of System of a Down, and he was saying how music can become such a transcendent experience for him, whether he's on stage or whether he's composing. I hear that's true for you too. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, recently I was invited to be a part of a very special concert at the Bella Theatre in Calgary, which is one of the most beautiful performance venues I've ever been in. Absolutely stunning acoustics, and so they told me, because I was a part of other people performing, and so I had my little spot in the evening, and they said, you're going to sing 3 songs, and I said, okay. So I brought 3 songs and sang the 3 songs, and then the audience was yelling and saying, another one, sing us an encore, and all that stuff, and I laughed and I just said, oh, really? Well, I only brought 3 songs, and I'm at that lovely point in life where I can't remember my music unless I have it in front of me. So so I was standing there, and the inner voices were going, "Well, what are you going to do? Are you gonna not sing a song now and just end it, or are you going to do something?" So I just got filled with a little wind of inspiration, and I just said, I think I'm just going to improvise something. So I did. I just on the spot completely improvised a song. And actually, the thing that was so beautiful about it was there was a dear friend who was on the stage, and she was behind me, and she had these massive wings, these white wings, angel wings, and so she was waving the wings behind me as I sang this song, and it was I also sing sometimes in a spirit language, and so in this song it was a combination of English and my spirit language, and it was just it went over extremely well. It was a perfect example of trust and just letting go.
Oh, magic.
Yeah. I saw. I was not part of. I didn't attend the concert, but I saw on Facebook, and I saw lots and lots of positive comments of your improvisation. Yeah. So, where do you see yourself in a year? Maybe better yet, you had mentioned you got a calling to do something, go somewhere. Maybe share that with us.
Yeah, I've been on this. I left Toronto in 2016, so I've for about this past 8, 9 years, I've been very focused on sharing songs and stories that and I have to say it's been a magical experience because I gave up all my possessions. I just hit the road, trusted the universe, said yes to life, and guide my way, show me where I'm going, because I had no idea where I was going to stay, and all that sort of a thing. And I can't tell your listening audience enough about when you step into the essence of your own gifted soul, the thing that gives you joy, those things that give you real joy, and the things that bring passion into your life, right? When you really tap into the essence of who you are, it's amazing how all of life comes to support you when you say yes to that. And I think there's an old Goethe quote where he says, once you say yes to the universe, all kinds of other forces come to support that yes. And so that's my big encouragement for people because in my life, I've had to say yes over and over and over and over again, especially in those moments where there was no yes inside of me.
So, we in the green room we had talked about that you had been called. Could you share like somebody you've just been called to do something that you've not done before?
Yeah, like okay, yeah. I guess I was leading up to that because I basically at this point after 8 or 9 years, and um, I've been feeling a lot of inner reflection on what's next, or how is it that I can bring what I do more effectively into the world, and so on. And so a friend of mine, or someone I've he's a dear friend now, but I met him, I don't know, a year or so ago, uh, in a men's group which I'm a part of. I'm a part of a worldwide men's group, and he came on, and he's been living for the past 13 years in Ecuador, and he has a very special adventure that he is going on, and he has invited 8 people to join him, and so he sent me an invitation to accompany him, um, and because it feels like 9, I'm really into numbers, so 9 for me is like a completion. It's like a cycle of completion. And so I've been really feeling something. What direction would I be given now? What inspiration would speak to me now? And would it require me to be to take a risk, to really step out into something that normally I wouldn't necessarily even think I could do? And so I've been invited to go on a sailing vision quest adventure, and to do it in the sailing in the Mediterranean amongst the Greek islands. And we're going to be sailing like most days, just 2 hours or so, and then we do a workshop together on the boat or on the beach or whatever, and then we create music together. It's all about up leveling. So I've called the GoFundMe that I'm hosting right now. It's called Next Level Calling. So it's what's calling me to the next level, and so I'm open to seeing where that is going to take me. Like what adventure would or what experience would I go through in being on that adventure with these people? And they're all like amazing people who are going on this. There's only 8 people who will be on the boat. So yeah.
So this is not like a Royal Caribbean cruise, or so it's a small, intimate affair.
Yeah. And we'll be going to some temples. We'll be going into caves, and so we'll be spending time in the belly of the earth, being close to nature, and being creative and reinventing where life can take us at this point.
And for our viewers and listeners, our audience, most of our guests, or I'll say all of our guests, all at some level have talked about getting back into nature, to find yourself, to find your truest self. You can find yourself in the concrete jungle, but to find your truest self, you need to get out of the concrete jungle. You need to get away from what is normal for you and get back into nature and just be one with the trees, the river, the jungle, just whatever natural environment you can find yourself in. Get out of Dodge and get into nature.
That feeling of nature. Well,
Yeah. Sorry, say that again, Sarah?
That feeling of nature, it's rather sublime, that we all get that, really, right? Why do we wait? Why do we leave it to treat ourselves with all these adventures when they could just be right there? We could create them to happen. I love that you've manifested this amazing sailing trip, and what an experience that's going to be for you and everyone with you. Oh, how do you think that intimate group with creativity and nature and all the other aspects that you've got to share, how do you think you can walk away or maybe fly away from that experience?
Well, probably more esoterically plump. Yeah, I would walk away. I'm sure I would be walking away deeply inspired, and I've already got certain ideas that are percolating in as to ways of stepping into other ways in which I can work with people. So yeah, I'm allowing it to organically reveal itself to me.
Love it. In the moment. Excellent.
Yeah.
I went to Peru, and I met a whole bunch of wonderful people. But I was taking an ayahuasca journey, and in the ayahuasca journey, the young man that was my roommate just looked perplexed as he came out, and I'm like, and I won't use his name, but I'm like, well, what's wrong? He says, I'm supposed to buy a guitar in town. And we're all looking at him. I don't play guitar. And so he decided, so and he had raised money to get a sleeping bag because it was colder than he thought. So I said, okay, I'll put money into a guitar. So we passed the hat around and we got him a guitar. And it was natural. He never read music before, but he could, by ear, he could pick it up. Once he had learned what some of the chords are, he was a natural, and we're all just looking and going like, "Oh my goodness!" It's like, and because he was brave enough, silly enough, or crazy enough, or some people would say stupid enough to follow a path outside of himself and get out of his comfort zone. It was beautiful. He still plays guitar today, and he's phenomenal.
Love it. I love that. Yeah.
So speaking of guitars, is using a guitar somewhere that you go to initially as you're creating whatever you're creating, or do you go to pen and paper first, or is there a sound, or is it completely different every time?
I would say there's three things that tend to draw me into the compositional experience. One is I go on and I experiment with chord progressions. So I just try a variety of different chord progressions until I find one that seems to have the melodic feel of the message that it is that I want to convey, and it's an incremental process because, like for example, the lyrics I have just read to you in the Circle of Life, you get the first two verses go fairly quickly and easily almost. But then when you get into the second half of the song, it becomes more of a challenge as to how you're going to change it up a little bit. You're going to add a little more tension this way, all that sort of a thing, creating contrast, and so on. But many times it's the chord progression, and I'll find one, and once I get inspired by the chord progression, then I'll find a melody that makes me want to, that I want to sing, like that it inspires me to sing a particular melody. Other times, I will write rhythmically with with words in terms of the syllables. So a syllabic rhythmic composing. That's what I call it. So I look at I might say the first line of a song. I'll go da 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 da. So then I would find words that would have that kind of a rhythm to it. And then I would want to create a little contrast. So that the second line I go, instead of going da 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 da, I go da 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 da, and so on. So it just becomes this playful experience. And so sometimes I've written a whole song just writing rhythmic lyrics, and the song, and then when it's done, finding the actual chords to play the song becomes like easy, like it almost falls into the pocket. So yeah.
So today we'd like to end with one of Tru's songs, "In the Arms of Love." Is that what you'd like the song to end with?
Yeah, I think that's there was another song I was thinking might be pretty powerful for people, and that's one of the ones I also sent you, called "Love Again," which had an unusual experience, which was that I put it up on Facebook, and it was during the time there was all this conflict that was going on in the Middle East and Palestine and Israel and all that, as well as, and I was just feeling very that I wanted to write something that would speak to a person's capacity to love again, especially when their life has been traumatized. And in particular, what was really speaking to me was the life of children. And so there was something about that said, I got, when a parent has lost their children in a tragedy such as a war or whatever, and of course, and it's connected to decades and even centuries of intercultural conflict, it makes it very difficult for a father of their lost children to find that capacity to love again, because you can become totally weighed down by such experiences, right? So I wrote this song called Love Again, and within 9 days, almost 3,000 people came and listened to the song. And it just seemed like it was a perfect timing for that particular song to be out there. And In the Arms of Love, In the Arms of Love is just a beautiful song, almost like many people speak of that song because they can put it on and their babies fall asleep, and it's just a beautiful, loving song. Yeah. So I know you only got 2 minutes.
Yeah. So what would you like us to end with?
Well, let's end with In the Arms of Love. I mean, the other one's got a little bit of slight touch of heaviness to it, so I'd rather leave us on a nice, cozy, warm, fuzzy feeling.
Okay, so go to Tru's website, which is on the bottom, and check out Love Again. And I just want to say thank you for being our guest today, and I wish you many successes in getting to Greece and the further adventures. And I look forward to listening to the next time that you're at Unity. And for our viewers, listeners, whether it's live or replay, I just want you to know that you are loved, and there are ways for you to love again. Sarah?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to end this with something my daughter said when she was little, and it was heartwarming. I left it on my door so I would see it as I opened the door to life every day. And she simply said, love is the answer.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing your song, Tru.
Beautiful. Thank you
Till
so
next
much
time.
for having me. Yeah.
Okay.
I was born in the arms of love, a miracle unfolding from above, tears and joy with my first breath. In the arms of love, I see you see me, we reflect eternity, endless ways we can proceed in the arms of love, 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 you'll see everything is now before for you. Trust the way that speaks to you, knowing life will show you the way to begin your new day. In the arms of love, 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 you'll see that you have never been all alone. Truth will always lead you home. There is nothing that you need to hide, as all returns to love. In the arms of love, in the arms of love, in the arms of love, be. In the arms of love, in the arms of love, in the arms of love, you'll see. There is nothing that you need to hide, as all returns to love.